What's up guys? Coach Robes here. Today's video is going to be a little bit different because in this series I talk about my professional career and the last 15 years of my entire life spanning so many different industries like freelance photography, small business owner, accounting, advertising, marketing, and now mentorship and career coaching. And this channel is dedicated to me asking myself over 100 questions about my career journey, Robes Road, as I am now trying to call this channel, and see if there's anything along the journey or along the road of my career that can help entail your own journey by listening to the insights I have to give about questions to help me reflect on my journey and the career and all these different areas of my life and professional career that I've been a part of. And so today's question is a really interesting one, and this is why I'm set up here in front of my LinkedIn, is because I'm going to take you guys through every single job that I've ever had, at least the ones that I've posted about on my LinkedIn, and talk about them a little bit in detail. I'm going to try to keep this video as short as I possibly can, but still give you guys as many insights as possible. So let me just hover over to my LinkedIn page, which by the way, connect with me on LinkedIn and let's talk there. But LinkedIn's a really great networking site. I cannot recommend utilizing it enough. It is definitely been my number one source for finding and connecting with other people in my industry. It's helped me find a lot of random jobs, funny enough, within my freelance photography work, because people remember me for my photography work, even though I work in social media and advertising. But it's also where I've listed every single job I've ever had. And I guess depending on who you ask, you could argue that you probably don't want to put every single thing you've listed, but I don't know. I've just always felt like listing all my experiences has been nice to kind of see in terms of my entire body of my professional work. So 23 experiences that I've listed on my LinkedIn. And we're starting at number one. I've talked about this in another video, by the way, but my very first job ever, I guess this is true. This is when I was a client relation representative at Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. The summer of 2007, I did it for 3 months. And I prepared tax papers and forms for clients that we would mail out. I remember commuting 2 hours every day to the South Bronx. It was located down the street from Yankee Stadium, and I would sit there for like 7 hours stuffing envelopes, and eventually the company would send these out to clients, and then, you know, they would get people to sign up for their tax services. And I mean, I didn't learn a lot at that job, but I did learn about making money because it was the first time I ever had a debit card. And it's the first time we ever received money on a bi-weekly basis. And so I'd use that money to buy myself food, use it to purchase things with a card for the first time. I would commute a lot of hours. I can't believe I actually did that, to be totally honest. It was a really insane experience to commute from East Queens all the way up to the South Bronx. But I did that. And yeah, I was a sophomore in college when I did that job in 2007, which is insane. The second job I've ever had was my first job at my school, where I worked at the public relations office at the University of Scranton. Shout out Royals. To be honest, I can't remember a ton of what I did there. Let's see. I wrote assisted in organizing multiple university events. I also helped the alumni relations office. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think this was a job where there was a lot of administrative work. So I'd go into an office every day. I think I'd work on email lists and help get circulation out for the public relations board at the University of Scranton. And if you're a college student and you're looking for, you know, work on your campus, yeah, try out different things. I even have my next job here that I listed, the advertisement and distribution manager for the student newspaper. And I did that in 2009 and 2010. So I did that my junior year, no, it looks like my senior year of college. I did help curate some of the advertisements and helped on invoicing and got people in the local area who own restaurants or businesses to publish their advertisements in the newspaper. And I ended up using that title to help me in my early start of my advertising and marketing career, because it was the only thing I had that was close to an advertising job, even though it was for a local newspaper at my school. But I think that is something that we overlook a lot in our experiences that we've had in the past, whether they're in high school or in college, is connecting the dots on how they will help you in the future for different roles you might have. And so this role that I had, you know, in 2010 that I did for 10 months ultimately ended up on my resume years down the road when I was finally applying for my first advertising jobs. And it helped me speak a little bit to the advertising world. I mean, granted, it's very different than what I do now, but that is one of the cases where I would say all your experiences, all 23 experiences that I have on my LinkedIn, it's about connecting the dots and telling the story to the recruiter, to the hiring manager, to the person that's ultimately gonna pay you to do some kind of work, is articulating that story to the team that is going to hire you based on all the experiences you have and make it make sense to them, right? Like in my YouTube channel here, I'm trying to connect the dots on all these little aspects and areas of my professional career so that I can draw out insights for you guys listening here to hopefully entail your own journey and your own road, which is why I'm calling this channel Robes' Road for now. Then this is my first real job out of college. After I finished my accounting degree, I took up a staff auditor position at Padilla & Company, which is a small accounting firm here in Queens, for 4 years and 9 months. I did that from 2010 when I graduated to June of 2015. And I talk a lot about this in my other videos, but I got laid off from that job after 4 years. And to be honest, guys, it was such a blessing in disguise because after 4 years of doing that job, I realized that I had no direction. I had no real long-term goals when it came to that job, if I'm being totally honest with you. But it was a job, and I was young, and I was in New York City, and I was actually making, an income. I think I was making like $35,000 a year, $40,000 a year, something like that. But to me, that felt like a lot of money. But more on how that role taught me more and gave me freedom and it gave me more time to experiment and do things like building a small business here in New York City. I started a dance studio with 2 friends of mine. I started dance communities and dance teams and was very involved in the dance scene and community here in the early part of my 20s. But yeah, in terms of my professional career, it was interesting how I managed to pivot out of that, but because I got laid off, which was a blessing in disguise, which I'll link in the description to go follow my other videos on how that turned out. In that time I got laid off, I ended up taking a couple different interesting roles here, which I'll roll through next in the next 3 minutes. But operations associate at Go Butler. This was one of the first startups I ever worked at, and it was a very lean team. I'm talking like, we must have had 20 people at that entire company. And at the time, it was a cool program that you would text in any kind of request to our app. And us as the operations team, we would go and make any request happen, whether it was getting you flowers, getting a special kind of cake delivered to you, any kind of like pickup order, within legal standing. But it was one of those interesting apps at the time, and I just needed a job for a few months, and I found this and I thought it was interesting, and I worked at a startup with people and talked to founders and CEOs who ran it. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit of a toxic work environment, and I was still young and didn't have a lot of experience in working on small teams, but it helped me realize that working at a small startup was interesting, to say the least, for the time being. And I did learn a lot, and I learned that being in a startup is not easy because you wear a lot of different hats, even though you might have one title. And I'll talk more about more startup experience in a future role that I did for digital marketing. I ended up working at another small to medium type place as a sales marketing assistant at Brand Yourself. I think they're still around. And their main value proposition was that they help clients position their stories on Google searches and help them with their online reputation in terms of the things people were looking up online about you. So that was really interesting because we had to be on the phone and use Salesforce, I believe, or a CRM tool to help track clients and conversations and see if they would be willing to sign up to use our product. And that's when I realized that sales definitely wasn't for me. It might be for me now that I'm a little bit different and I know how to sort of engage and connect with people better, but at the time I was so bad at it. I really couldn't sell something that I wasn't passionate about or had no interest in, but it was a job and I did it for 3 months. And I learned that sales is not my forte, at least it wasn't in that time in my life. I ended up becoming a marketing coordinator for Pasenka Properties. So shout out to Nicole Pasenka, who was the owner and founder of Maharlika and Jeepney in Manhattan. And I got to work with her for a few months, and she is such a cool person, and she's so wise and knowledgeable and had such an energy to her that I, at the time, was honestly a bit nervous to work for her because she's such a well-known name in the restaurant industry. But she definitely helped me find and learn a little bit about marketing, and to see her work her entrepreneurial spirit into all of her projects was really cool to just witness for a few months as I worked with her on a few social media projects here and there, mostly in the background. But That was a really cool experience to get to work with Nicole now. And now she's, I believe, down in Florida working on new projects there. But she is still, holding that flag strong for being someone who was really the backbone, I think, around the evolution of Filipino food, especially in America and in the New York City restaurant scene. Okay, so after my marketing coordinator position and working with Nicole, I ended up taking another position at Fluent City, which was another startup in Brooklyn. And this one was cool because it was my first time working in a real digital marketing role. I had done advertising work for my school newspaper. I had done a little bit of marketing and coordinating for Nicole at Jeepney. But around this time in 2016, I went back to school at General Assembly to take up digital marketing course. And that was the same time I met my assistant professor who needed to hire an intern for the summer. That same year, after I had finished the program at General Assembly, I took up this digital marketing internship. And I talk a lot about this in my other videos, but that was really cool because I spent about 5 months there working on email marketing, branding, creatives, copywriting, search marketing, social marketing. I worked with the sales team to figure out how to get people to sign up through our marketing efforts. I also got to work very closely and see how CEOs and founders work at startups like this. It was really fast paced for me, and I also didn't have a personality back then that was really curious or engaging with others or knew how to speak and articulate myself well with others. And so I had a really hard time just kind of feeling comfortable there. And this is honestly for the next couple of jobs, honestly. It wasn't even until like 4 or 5 years ago from today when I'm recording this that I actually started getting comfortable with coworkers and teammates. I think being at a small startup, the bigger personality you have, the more interesting you are, the more talkative you are. I noticed that those are the kinds of people that can make changes and impact in a small team, and I definitely didn't have that. I was very shy and very unconfident in that role. But looking at this now and telling you guys these stories about my old experiences reminds me, or I guess helps me think about like what it would be like working at a startup now, because I am a very different person now, and I think it'd actually be really fun to take my knowledge that I have now about marketing or social media and the work that I have with clients and implement that into a startup. So yeah, if anyone out there is looking for the advertising, marketing, social media strategist of sorts or consultant, hit me up, find me on LinkedIn, would love to talk, because I have a lot of experiences and I have been through a lot of different client projects and have worked on a lot of different industries over the last 15 years. So it would be cool to kind of see where working at a small startup or a smaller team would take me today. After that, I ended up landing my first agency role in advertising, and this was a whirlwind because that was about 9 years ago now. And my first experience was at Havas Media, where I worked on the social media team there, and I was working and learning all about social media and the landscape at the time, and I was managing way more than I think any person should. But to be honest, I just really wasn't sure about how boundaries worked and how teams hired or how accounts were spread across multiple people. And so I just kind of thought it was normal to work like 5 accounts at one time. At any one point I was on Choice Hotels, Philips Healthcare, Philips Lighting, Bristol Myers Squibb, Thomas Reuters. I think I worked on Swarovski at the time, TD Bank, that's not even on here, and maybe a few others. There was an insurance brand that I worked for as well. Anyway, that was rough. That was a rough first year and a half for me, because even though I did get a promotion in that time from analyst to specialist, my confidence, my ability to set boundaries, my ability to speak to clients was nowhere near where it is now. But for anyone listening and thinks that when they watch my videos, he is such a well-spoken, articulate person, believe me, that is not the case. Talk to anyone that used to work with me in 2017, 2018, when I used to, work at these agencies, and they would not even be able to recognize me, I think, today. So yeah, it all starts somewhere. I think any sort of challenge that you have, any sort of thing that you're anxious about but want to get better at handling mentally, you gotta start by putting yourself through it, being aware of what you need to work on, and getting 1% better at it every day. Like, not major monumental jumps every single day. I'm talking like very tiny incremental changes to help you grow. That's the only way. And it's like going to the gym, right? Like you don't just lift weights one day and all of a sudden you're fit and muscular and strong. Like you gotta lift small weights at first. You gotta go through the pain of waking up early sometimes and going to the gym. You gotta go through the failures of what it means to want something but not see the results of it and pivot and adapt. And yeah, those are things I would definitely tell my younger self now if I was my own manager at these old agencies I used to work at. And after that, I spent about 6 months at a senior specialist of social media role at Reprise, which is under IPG. And that was really interesting because I worked on a big pharmaceutical brand at the time. But more importantly, I worked with a manager that definitely was not suitable for me. You know, she was really rough on me, and not in like a I'm showing you tough love kind of way, just really like in a toxic, condescending way. And that was really bad for my mental health. And to be honest, guys, I cannot believe I lasted 6 months at that agency, or on that account rather. I will talk about how I ended up back at IPG Media Brands years later and redeemed myself and felt like I finally grew more into the person I was supposed to become. But that role really took a blow to my confidence. It really almost made me feel like I shouldn't be in advertising. And I'll be honest, it did help me understand the importance of what it means to be a good manager to people, to be kind to others, to be helpful, to be patient and understanding with people that may not think the way you do or understand the same things you do. So after having that not so great experience with the manager I had, it definitely reminded me that my mission one day would be to be a better manager than her and to be a better manager for people when it came to be my turn. And looking back now, the last 5, 6, 7 years managing people, I want to say that I've gone above and beyond in doing that, and it's my favorite part of the job, is helping people, teaching them, coaching them, mentoring them, really trying to help them grow in a positive, understanding, and patient way, not in a forced, condescending, and impatient way, which is what I was experiencing with my manager. But again, I'm very grateful for that tough time in my life, because after that, I ended up becoming a manager for the first time at iProspect, which is currently under Dentsu. And I spent the last 4 years there becoming more of who I am today. I found a manager who directly mentored me, helped me, trusted me, made me feel like I could really be myself around others. That helped me find teammates that appreciated me for who I was and didn't look at my good qualities as a sign of weakness, but rather something that the account and the team needed at the time. And what I mean by that is, when people see you as a nice person, they often take it as, this is a way I can take advantage of somebody. I could act however I want to them and they won't fight back, they won't say anything back. Nice people, kind people often get put in that box, and it's really unfair. And I want to say that someone recently who reminded me of this is a buddy of mine, Yue. He's the person behind Yue Eats on YouTube, so I will shout out his channel down in the description. But recently in an altercation he had in one of his YouTube videos, he reminded me that even if you're a kind and genuine and thoughtful person, people perceive that as weakness and feel like they can talk down to you or bully you or talk negatively to you, and that's not right at all. That's messed up. And shout out to Yue for reminding me that when he stood up for himself in an altercation he had in one of his YouTube videos, which I'll link again in below. So yeah, this is the first place that really appreciated me for who I genuinely was. And when I found that kind of environment where I could literally be Robes, I could just literally show up and just be myself and mentor people and manage people the way I felt was appropriate and right, that is when I started to grow into the person I am today. And I think I started that job when I was like 29 years old, so this is like right before I turned 30. I might have been like 28, but it was around this time when I really started to grow into the person and the way I manage people now. So man, shout out to my time at Dentsu on the Microsoft account. That was a really cool time, and I had some really cool years there and really cool teammates, and I miss those times a lot. And everything that I learned at those 4 years at Dentsu really shaped the kind of manager I am today. And I would like to think that anyone who has worked with me since then has enjoyed working with me. I can say that about myself, and I think that's something that I really appreciate about going through tough times, because at my last agency it wasn't like that at IPG, and now going into this role, I managed to find a team that really valued me, and I'm really fortunate for that. And then after that, I took some time off to, step away from the account management role and really figure out what did I want to do next in my career that could be different in a way, because I felt very stuck. At this point, I had been doing account management, client work, managing teams for the last 7 years at this point. And in May of 23, the year I took off from work and took a step away from my accounting job, I ended up taking a residency coordinator role at IPG Media Brands. So I'm back now at IPG, and I took up the coordinator position to help with the summer internship and help the residents in that program. There were 63 residents across the US in this 10-week program that ran from June to August. And I'm still in touch with a lot of those residents today, and they're working in the agency life now. But it was the first time I really got to take a very deep dive into mentorship and coaching, because every single day part of my job was to help the program and provide workshops and opportunities for these young media professionals to learn about the industry through this internship program. And another big part of it was because at this time I had about 7 years of experience in advertising. The residents in that program asked me a lot of different questions in group settings, in one-on-ones. And throughout that 10-week program, I spent a lot of time answering a lot of these questions for them and helping them understand how to navigate the early challenges of their career, whether it was how to figure out how to get a job, how to interview, how to find resources, how to find mentors, how to work with teams, all these things that I didn't realize were helpful bits of information based on my past experiences. This was the first role I had that was telling my story and my experiences and talking about my challenges to other people, help these young media professionals, help these interns. And I'm so proud of where all of them are now. A lot of them have moved on to agency life. A lot of them have moved on to other different careers now at this point. And that was about 2-3 years ago now. So yeah, that was really cool. And that was, to this day, my favorite job I've ever had, because now I'm doing stuff like this, creating this YouTube channel to house all the information that I have now about my career, and to provide a community and space for others to hear these stories and to also share their stories in the comments, so that we can all learn and grow together and gather key insights about our challenges and create spaces like that. I think are really important. And that 4 months that I spent as a residency coordinator at IPG really helped me see the value of sharing your experiences with others and being a mentor to others. So man, shout out to the residency program, summer of 23. Best job I've ever had. And that brings me to today, where I'm now an associate director, back in the client role, back in the account management role, working with teams, working with different channels, working with a day-to-day team that I'm now mentoring and coaching every single day. And shout out to my team, because they're amazing. They do such great work. But I think the thing that I give to them as their lead and their associate director is the gift of confidence. And that is something that has taken me 7+ years, 8 years to even develop. And so now I'm taking all those challenges I had, all those failures that I had, and I'm learning how to give that back to them now in this role today that I have at Hearts and Science with my account at Omnicom. So that brings us to today, where it is now I'm creating this YouTube channel. I'm creating other communities like Directory, where we're a advertising resource group and we're free, and we're a space that other advertisers can come and share their knowledge and connect and grow their own careers and tell their stories. And so places like Directory and places like this community on YouTube are really a combination of the last 15 years that I've just walked through with you guys. And I know I wanted to keep this video short, but I think that's really impossible to keep it under 10 minutes when you have a whole lifetime ago of experiences you got to kind of connect the dots on. So Steve Jobs once said, you cannot try to connect the dots and make sense of things looking forward. You can only make sense of your life by taking a moment to pause and look back on all the things you've accomplished, and you've got to pray that somehow all of that will just connect and make sense down the road. And I'm a big believer in that. I truly believe that everything that you've accomplished in your life is all leading up to something, because your life can change overnight. I believe it's true, but it just takes years to get to that one night. So I appreciate this question, this reflection time on my career, and talking through my entire career timeline today and what it's taught me. So if you're sticking around to the end of this video, God bless you. I really appreciate all, I think 11 people who are subscribed to my channel right now. This is just the beginning, but please drop in the comments below any questions you have about my career. Find me and connect with me on LinkedIn and answer the question of the day about your career timeline. Talk to us about, you know, your journey and the jobs that you've had over the years, whether you've just started or you've had a long season of different experiences like me. But I'd love to hear them. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Robes' Road, questions about my career journey. And I'll catch you guys in the next question. Peace.